Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the mock drafts are flying, and we're breaking down two players the Suns very well could have their eye on in less than a month at the NBA draft. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Tuesday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Just click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Two draft deep dives and more KD trade talks from our Locked On NBA mock draft. Joining me for all of it, as always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
I'll be honest with you, feeling better. Like a couple hours ago, you're like, what are we going to do? And we decided we're going to do some draft deep dives. And I'm like, all right, here we go. I was actually having a little bit of fun. Reading a couple articles, watching some highlights, and I'm like, ooh, this isn't too hard. I could be an NBA scout. This is easy.
Yeah. Mr. The draft is a crapshoot and picks are worthless. Suddenly you're a scout. Yeah. I'm a
scout, a savant. And
let's get to our hours. Well, yeah, exactly. Let's get to our first player, Yaxel Lendeborg from UAB. Now, his name would make you think that he is a foreigner, somebody who is, on grainy tape from some tiny league in a country you haven't thought about before. But no, he is American, and he is from New Jersey. And, of course, went to UAB this past season. Started actually, that's, of course, University of Alabama, Birmingham. He started at a junior college in Arizona, which is kind of a funny tidbit on him. But transferred, of course, a couple of different times. And the interesting thing here, Ben, as we talk about these 6'9" forward, fourth year, I'm not calling him a senior because he's bounced around so much, but fourth year, 22 years old already. But he has an offer on the table that I've seen reported as multi-million dollars in NIL deals to go to Michigan in the transfer portal. And that's obviously a program that's reestablished itself at the top of the pecking order. And that deadline is on June 15th. So that's the headline for this guy. But I have to tell you that as a player, he checks a lot of the boxes of what I feel like Brian Gregory was talking about at his introductory press conference of the types of things he wants Suns players to be able to do in the image he wants to build this roster in.
First off, this is so stupid. I'm a big name guy. So whenever I saw the name Yaxel and get mocked to the Suns once or twice and in every which way, I'm like, all right, I got to check this guy out. 6'9" senior. You mentioned it. He played a couple of years at Arizona Western in Yuma. So here's the thing about Yaxel is immediately you're like, oh, this guy's only played 2 years of UAB ball. He had some issues with his grades in high school. Wasn't able to get to a better college. Ended up going to Arizona Western, then UAB. I mean, listen, man, I've done, an hour and a half of researching this guy, and I'm kind of an early candidate for the Ryan Dunn Award. What I will be championing that as this year because, man, I'm a sicko. When it comes to NBA prospects, you throw a 6'9" wing at me, athletic wing at me, I'm going to jump all over it. And so you and I were looking at some draft profiles, and there was, a guy who we'll talk about a little bit later, a statistic that just pops out at you. There's one player outside of Cooper Flagg who led their team in every major statistical category, and it was Cooper Flagg and Yaxel Lendeborg. Also, in the last 20 years, only one Division I player has had, over the course of his entire career, same game or not, a game with 30 points, a game with 20 rebounds, a game with 8 assists, a game with 9+ stocks, steals plus blocks, and a game with 40 minutes and 0 turnovers. That is only Yaxel Lendeborg. So, yeah, the Michigan stuff worries me that maybe he could go back. But, I mean, you're kind of looking
if
at
that
a guy
happens, then we just won't. Then he'll just be off the board. Right? So
sure. But
they're not going to draft him and then he leaves like a high school kid in the MLB draft or something.
No, sure. It's fine. He'll be off the board before that. But what I'm just saying is a 6'9" wing who could shoot the ball better than Ryan Dunn did last year, and defensively was also the the American Athletic Conference. I think that's the name of that conference.
Yep.
Who he won the Defensive Player of the Year award too. So clearly
twice, but back to back on that.
There you go, back to back. So early candidate for the Ryan Dunn Award. Granted, we've done this once, but a strong impression from him. What'd you think?
So low volume on threes. So absolutely, the percentages are nice to see. He was 35% on about 100 total attempts in the 2 seasons of Division I that he played. You mentioned the stocks, the percentages on that, steal rate and block rate are good. Because it's kind of the opportunity that you do get when you play in one of these smaller conferences and smaller programs is a guy like this can end up being basically lead playmaker despite not really having the skill set where he would be doing any of that on a better team. And so it can kind of be a blessing and a curse, and that's why you see players like this sometimes develop a more well-rounded skill set. And I would say he did. This past season, his usage went up and his turnover rate went down. He is maturing as a guy who can have the ball in his hands and be trusted. But the part that honestly above all of that jumps out to me as a real illustration of his physical profile is that I look at the conference tournament games. All right, and he has a 7'4" wingspan, I should say too, just to put some numbers to that physical profile. The conference tournament of the AAC, as well as the NIT tournament, which UAB participated in this past season. Now, he's playing more minutes because it's tournament, it's postseason basketball, so to speak. But the amount of rebounds and stocks that this dude was piling up when he got the chance and when the minutes were high. First conference tournament game, 20 rebounds, including 7 on offense, and 9 stocks. Second conference tournament game, 13 rebounds, 5 on the offensive side, 4 stocks. You go to the NIT, 17 rebounds twice, 5+ stocks twice. He just absolutely dominates games with his athleticism and his physical profile. And you look at him, he looks like he should be playing tight end. Looks like he should be going in the 4th round of the NFL draft as a freaking, ball catching tight end. It's the tools are tantalizing when you think about the fact that he already has gotten some reps to develop out his skill set and his offensive game on top of everything that's there. And again, he feels like a guy the Suns would absolutely look at based on all that stuff.
I don't know where you go when it comes to like evaluating talent. Like I've been so scorned before by Dragon Bender, Marquise Chris, like guys that didn't pan out for the Suns. So I try to find things that will translate. And those are the types of things that you had mentioned that I like to look into. It's one of the reasons why I'm so high on Walter Clayton Jr. because I watched him in the tournament run. He was the sole reason at times why Florida won that championship. And it's the same thing with him where you look and see what he did when the lights were the brightest. I'm not so much worried about the shooting aspect. I don't know if that's going to contribute to the NBA. I do know that rebounds, blocks, athleticism. He almost averaged 2 blocks a game. Like I know it's UAB, but still, it's hard to do. Those types of things translate to the NBA more than just scoring does. So that's what gets me interested in him.
They do, but so let's be realistic, right? Because on the Yahoo Sports draft board, which is Kevin O'Connor, he's 23rd ranked. On the Ringers, J. Kyle Mann, he is 20th. Not a lot of other people have big boards out right now, but those 2 guys are on top of stuff. So we can't just glaze a dude who's going in the 20s. Obviously, there's some issues, right? And so, what? I'm just using a term that people use.
I hate that. I expect better from you than using the word glaze.
All right.
Sorry.
We can't just pump up a guy who is in the 20s because obviously that would be silly. Otherwise, he'd be the second-ranked prospect behind Cooper Flagg if it was only positive. So what you're saying is true, right? I think of this maybe from a Suns perspective, people listening, and even just for you and I to keep like a benchmark of how we're thinking about Yaxel Lendeborg as we bring him up more as the process goes along. He's probably a more developed and higher skill level version of Ish Wainwright. Is that fair to say? Ish had the physical strength. He could make a wide open three if he really needed to, but that was inconsistent. And that basically was where the list ended with Ish. And he was much older than this by the time we ever saw him. Although Lendeborg, we should say, is he's going to be 23 when he starts in the NBA. He's already about to turn 23. So really, we should say 23. But this guy has a little bit of playmaking to him, a little bit of, IQ as a defender to generate those blocks and steals. And that bodes well for a higher floor and a higher ceiling in the NBA. But the stuff you're saying is going to translate, physicality, athleticism, rebounding, those are things a center does. He's not a center. He's 6'8", 6'9". So a wing who only defends and rebounds, those guys don't play in the NBA anymore. So the other stuff has to translate, just like we said it has to with Ryan Dunn, or this guy's going to be overseas in 3 years. Like, that's just how it goes.
Yes, but here's what makes Yaxel more interesting than a guy like Ish Wainwright. We knew what Ish Wainwright was mostly coming out of the draft. I mean, listen, I didn't hear of Ish Wainwright when he came into the NBA.
Yeah, he was undrafted. That's why we didn't see him until he was already 28 or whatever.
Yeah, but I think there's also a reason why he went undrafted. He wasn't skilled enough to be in that. I think the reason why Yaxel is falling is because he played at UAB and he had to spend 2 years at Yuma, if I'm not mistaken, where like you lose some of the tape, and some people might just not want to take a flyer on a guy who played at UAB, put up good numbers, was athletic, but still kind of raw because we don't really know what he is.
Maybe a player like this at a bigger school is more in the mid-teens or even late lottery. But still not a top 5, top 10 guy because of the questions around his offensive game. So I think it's just the good and the bad, the pros and the cons. But if you're talking about his shooting, which is the key swing skill for a lot of these types of players, because even when you say he led his team in assists, like UAB maybe could have gotten the ball moving a little more. 4 assists leading the team is not exactly, the Popovich Spurs out there. But his free throw shooting, he took a ton of free throws because he's such a physical dude and got so many offensive boards and everything. He took 300 free throws in college and made 78%. And free throw shooting is the best indicator of three-point shooting if you're looking at draft prospects coming out of college. So that's a good sign for his overall shooting ability and touch and just putting the ball in the basket with a jump shot, is that he made his free throws. So there's a lot to like. Absolutely a player I could see the Suns taking and somebody we will definitely talk more about.
I just want to ask you really quickly, is this a guy that you think will be available when the Suns pick? I think that's an appropriate question to ask. Yeah, you might not know. And I don't know is a fine.
Do you know? How would we guess that?
Well, this is why. I think he will be, at least not at 29. I think he will be around where the Suns are at. I say give or take 5 picks because of his rawness. The fact that he had to go to UAB, the mention of 4 assists a game. That's not exactly what you had mentioned. You referenced the Popovich Spurs years ago. For all those reasons, teams that really need someone that can contribute to them as a star later on, other teams, the Bulls, whoever, they might not want to take a risk on that guy. So I do think he would fall to the Suns, whereas the next guy we talk about, more time, more years in NCAA, where they've had enough, and they could see the tools and be like, yeah, that guy might be able to do a little bit more for me than Yaxel would. So I think he will be, give or take 5 spots where the Suns will be picking. I think that's a good place for him to go as of right now. I don't really know.
Next, Maxime Raynaud, the Stanford center. We've talked about a ton already. Let's dive deeper on a dude who has been just said the Suns will be lucky to even have a chance to get. Next. First, today's show brought to you by Wayfair, the clutchest place to buy furniture, as I like to call it. The days are getting warmer, and longer. People are spending more time outside, and it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and at prices that fit your budget. Here in Arizona, here in Phoenix, it's swim time. It's pool time. So maybe there's a little umbrella. Maybe there's, a chaise lounge chair to lay on. Maybe there's, heck, I don't know. Does Wayfair have, like, pool play stuff? I don't know. Maybe not. You got to check it all out. Make it feel more like you, like they said. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online, and this summer, get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All right, keeping the show rolling, let's talk about Maxime Raynaud, the Stanford 7-footer, Ben, who is a senior, spent all 4 years up in Northern California. He's also 22. Because he made the board, the big board for Kevin O'Connor over at Yahoo, we have some comps for this one. I don't think we said any comps for Yaxel. I should have looked because I actually think J. Kyle Mann usually has some. Oh, no, not in this case. Okay, so we didn't miss anybody. The comps from KOC on Raynaud, who he has 14th. So like you said, like this could be a guy where we're just dreaming. That's kind of why we are getting him out of the way now, because his stock might just explode. But he has Brooke Lopez and Rasheed Wallace. Those are very different players, so I'm a little
I don't understand
there.
that one at all. That doesn't. I don't understand.
Well, which one feels more real to you? Because they're very different.
Brooke Lopez.
Okay. Agreed. But even that, I think it's a little bit because they both went to Stanford. If we're being honest, I think KOC is just like
both tall white dudes that can spread the floor. Yeah, I mean, yeah. He also kind of looks like him.
Yeah, but the funny one about that too is also that Brooke Lopez didn't spread the floor coming out of college.
Not
so
out of
like
the draft.
Which Brooke Lopez are we talking about? But now Brooke Lopez is a good comp because he this year, as a senior, Raynaud upped his three-point volume to nearly 7 per 40 minutes, made 35% of them. A lot of those were off movement, off, running and using him almost like a Karl Anthony Towns or a player like that, and his block rate jumped up as well. The question for me with Raynaud, Ben, is that if the Suns even had a chance to get him, a lot of this you can look at and say, did he just dominate because he's 7'1" and 22 years old going up against guys who were 5 inches shorter than him and 3 years younger than him? That would be the concern of was this statistical explosion that he had this last year kind of a mirage, because you should be killing people if you have that much of an advantage on them.
Yeah, did you see? Part of reading and some of the stuff was looking at his highlights. I want to see what he can do on the floor. A lot of UC Davis, Northern Arizona, got teams that they were playing on there where it just didn't look like the other team had a center that was within 4 inches of him. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't as wowed as I thought I would be. Now, maybe my expectations were too high and I was thinking of Kristaps Porzingis level of player. The lateral quickness worries me a little bit. He seemed like, had you had mentioned, was able to get to the basket at will just because of how big he was. A good floor spacer, but everything that I was kind of reading up outside of Rasheed Wallace and Brooke Lopez was he's kind of seen as a sneaky center, like a sneaky starting center, but most likely a backup in the NBA. Is that kind of the same feel you got outside of Rasheed Wallace and Brooke Lopez?
Well, those comps are always going to be guys who are, good. They're not going to pick bad players as a comp because then that's like, why even do it?
Yeah.
So
that,
that feels far-fetched. Like if it's a guy who's going to go in the middle or back of the first round, then you're comparing him to probably, borderline Hall of Fame type players. And yeah, it's ridiculous. But I think what makes you say backup?
Nothing he was doing. Now, listen, the shooting, some of this stuff that I was seeing when he was shooting the basketball, I was like, oh man, that's kind of actually silky smooth. But then you look at
the
his
shooting and the shooting and the size are the whole thing.
Yes,
That's the whole reason.
The shooting and the size, but it's not like the shooting is otherworldly. He shot 34%, not bad. Like what my point is it's not Cat. You know what from the 3-point land. It's not one of those.
That's why he's not going first overall like Cat's it.
Exactly. But
I still think he could be a starter.
I do think he could be a starter. But the reason, and then here's kind of where my counterpoint comes, and I don't want to become as just a Glazer for 6'8", 6'9" wings, and I honestly do feel like I'm in that boat a lot of the times. But another reason why I just don't think it works great with the Suns is he most likely a starting center or a backup center in the NBA? That's what I would ask you. What would you think?
Well, I think it depends on how much his other skills come around. Can he be a more consistent rebounder? Can he be a more consistent rim protector? Can he really use his size and physicality? He's really developed even for 22 physically. Can he use that and actually make an impact on the game with it? Or is the only way that his size comes into play is that he's just tall, and so he'll get some rebounds and occasionally block some shots, and when he takes a three, no one can block it because he's over the top of everybody. If that's the only way that his size really matters, then yeah, he is like a worse Porzingis, right? And that probably isn't like a great starter. But yeah, he's a high variance player for sure. You could see a version where he doesn't even make it in the NBA at all because the physicality never comes around, or you could see a version where he is basically, older Brook Lopez in terms of how he impacts the game.
I'm just watching highlights, and those can be very deceptive. I don't want people to think I'm grinding tape, hours of it, reading his pick and pop.
I think they know. Yeah, I think they know we're not Stanford experts.
I want that to be taken with a grain of salt when I give my opinion, is because I didn't see really much of any physicality. I thought there were a couple of moments watching it where he would dunk the ball, and I was like, damn, okay. Kind of like to see that, but it almost felt like he was way more comfortable out on the perimeter than he was down low, or at least getting the ball down low. Didn't think the handles were amazing. Again, 7'1" guy. I'm not going to kill him for that. Yeah. Didn't love the lateral quickness at all. Especially, I didn't think he was a stellar defensive performer, and that leads me to this. And the reason why I'm not axing it all together. I've spent 2 hours on this. But what I would say is the Suns already kind of have a guy who can handle the backup role, the backup center role in Oso Ighodaro.
You wouldn't be if you're drafting this guy, it's not because you think he's going to be a backup. You think he's going to be a backup, but if you're drafting him, you think he's a starter, right?
And then, or
he has the potential to be.
And so that's we don't know what the Suns what are you doing with Nick Richards?
You wouldn't take him probably, it sounds like.
As of right now, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't take him.
Just from what we've seen.
Right now, I wouldn't take him. I don't.
But I'm just saying, like, if the Suns drafted him, they would think he's our starter of the future. They wouldn't say he's replacing Nick Richards as our backup.
I was wrong. I was wrong about this when it came to Toumani Camara. One of the reasons why I was okay with the Suns trading him, because he's a second-round pick, and I didn't really know anything about him. But when I was watching him in the summer league, I was like, lateral quickness isn't great. It's one of the first things I look at because everyone in the NBA is so damn fast, and you got to be able to get out on the perimeter. If someone lays a pick on you, you got to get out in the guard that's shooting a three. I didn't see that in the very limited things that I've done, homework that I've done on him. Again, that can change, but as of right now, no, he's not the top.
He's not going to be
like
a switch big. He's not going to be like Oso out there on the perimeter, but all he would have to do is basically get to a point where, as a pick and roll, because Brook Lopez, if we're using that comp, he's not out there dancing around, and he's a defensive player of the year candidate every season of his late prime. So as long as you're able to have the right fit, not everybody gets Giannis next to them, but if you get a good big team and all you have to basically do is protect the rim, that's the type of, I think, situation that this guy would need. And then the offense has to come around. He can't just be a jump shooting big man. That's not enough. Even Miles Turner can run a pick and roll, catch the ball and dunk it, right? Even Porzingis can post up and get somebody with a hook shot or whatever. You gotta diversify and fill out the game. And when you're already this old, there's not quite as much of a ceiling on you as if he was already doing this at 19. So all of that is, again, I feel like 14, seeing him at 14 on KOC's board feels crazy high to me, personally. And it's pretty, again, a pretty high variance player, I think, is a good way to think about this guy because, again, bouncing off the Ringers draft board, and J. Kyle Mann, I think, does a really good job. He's not even on his top 33. So 14 from one guy, not even in the top 33 of the next guy. That shows you, I think, how wide the analysis is. But let's get to our negotiations with Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets. We said one last try to trade Kevin Durant in our Locked On NBA mock draft. Houston, pick up your damn phone. And they did. Let's talk about what came next. And we're closing out the show. We talked yesterday, Ben, about how we negotiated, played mock GM, put on our Brian Gregory Mission Impossible style face suits, and negotiated with the Nuggets.
Great movie.
And we negotiated with the Heat, and we got some better offers than we expected, and predictably, everybody laughed at us in the comments. I don't know where that hobby came. I don't know why people don't have much better to do than to just laugh at. We didn't even come up with those deals.
How? They're making it seem like we did that trade. It was people who covered the team. And then they told us there was someone in there saying that they were just helping us get clickbait. It's like we have nothing else better to do. It's like
do they actually cover the team, or do they just want to make up a trade that'll give you something to talk about? I'm like, what are we doing?
What are you talking about?
And yet here you are clicking and hating anyway. So it didn't even work if that was
just
our
hit
goal,
the like button.
It just made you more mad. But we talked about the Rockets, and here everyone can get a win on this one because Mr. Gatlin over there, who has covered the Rockets for a very long time and has hosted that show for a very long time, basically just said, I quit. Like, we could not come to a deal that made sense. So let's talk about what we went over with him. All right. So he started out at Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, this year's 10th overall pick from the Suns, and the 2027 pick that the Suns owe them as well. And then I said, the sticking point immediately became Jalen Green, right? Like that's the problem. So I said, instead of Jalen Green, how about Jabari Smith and Cam Whitmore? Because those two guys combined make the same as Jalen Green. Now we're talking pre-July 1st Jalen Green, where he's still on his rookie contract. So that's why that math works. And I just said, hey, remember, Miami's offering a second-year lottery pick. Khalil Ware. The best player that the Suns get back cannot be Jalen Green, who's already about to make $30+ million and might not even be as good as Khalil Ware next season. For all we know, I'm not saying that's true, but I'm negotiating here. Yeah. Then he responded. He said Jalen, Jabari, Landale as filler, took away this year's pick and left the 2027 pick. I'm like, hold on.
It got worse.
Jabari's replacing the pick and no Dylan Brooks. What's going on here? And I was like, this one is worse than the first one. And he said, what picks is Miami sending? I said, good
what did
ones.
you say? Yeah.
I said, good ones, like none of your business. And he said, I said, hey, doesn't the deal work with keeping Dylan Brooks, Jabari and Cam, who we had asked for, and then send one of their other pieces, Jock Landale or Jeff Green, or there's one other guy on their books that's about to expire, but if they traded him before July 1st, then that could work. Like, dump him somewhere else, and I think it works. And he said, no, the aprons get too messy. It has to be so specific because the Rockets are almost at the first apron and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, Fred VanVleet. He said, no. We said, is there a third team for Jalen Green? And he said he had already tried the Wizards. So they don't want Jalen Green. You suggested the Magic.
Yeah.
He kind of ignored that. And then he waited close to an hour, and he just texted us back. I don't see it coming together after playing with the numbers. Just take the Miami deal. So what were your takeaways and thoughts from kind of playing that all out? And again, pretending like we're in the negotiating room on this thing.
Yeah. I was playing on Fanspo and trying to figure out a deal that works again.
Yeah.
And this was the job that I was tasked with 2.5 weeks ago when we were coming up with deals that were way worse than the offers that we're getting, by the way, from actual people that cover the teams. And I just came to the same conclusion Jackson did. If he's going to give up Brooks, like, that's not the heart of a deal. You and I aren't scratching the itch because we got Dylan Brooks. We want Jabari Smith too. It's going to be, it's where I've come to the point where, like, I don't think the Rockets are going to trade for Kevin Durant. I think it's going to be someone else. It's just too difficult, man. I understand.
The only
Jackson's
way is,
point.
I think, Green getting to a third team.
Yes. And that could happen.
It's kind of like the thing with Dame being on the market a couple years ago where Hero was the sticking point, and they were spending all summer trying to find a third team for Hero, and it just never happened.
It's way too difficult for the Rockets to do it. Not because they don't have the assets. It's like one of those weird scenarios where, like, they have the assets easily to make the trade happen. But the players that they didn't think were going to be so valuable to their core, that being Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, who we kind of knew was going to be really helpful to their core. But at the time, Brooks's contract looked like they were paying him way too much, 4 years, $80 million. So at this point, it seems like it's going to be too difficult, man, because he tried to throw Jalen Green at us. And, like, that's a non-starter. No one wants Jalen Green.
Yeah, I don't know if no one wants Jalen Green because we're talking about a third team potentially being able to take him. The Suns' best player plays that position and already makes $50+ million. Jalen Green and Devin Booker do not fit together is my bigger issue with taking back Jalen Green. I don't love Jalen Green as a player, but maybe Brian Gregory does. I don't know. It's not like he's talentless or tapped out as a player, but he's almost his best hope of being an NBA player would be to be like Devin Booker, and the Suns already have Devin Booker. So it's just it doesn't add up. But
it's way
that's
too
the
much.
problem.
It's way too much.
Go ahead.
Just allocate. I was just gonna say it's way too much allocated to that position. Where who's gonna handle the ball? Like, I don't want Jalen Green being the point guard, and I certainly don't want Devin Booker to be the point guard anymore. I want him to have the ball in his hands, but Booker's better, I think, and I think you would agree with this as well, playing more off ball than he is playing on the ball.
Yeah, I think everybody listening knows why Jalen Green and Devin Booker don't fit. I think the issue is, too, that Houston's money is just in this weird spot where, like, again, I suggested VanVleet, but it's almost like VanVleet makes too much money.
He does.
Because he's already at 42, so almost anyone else on this whole roster that you add on alongside VanVleet, you're already over KD's salary, basically. Like, Jabari Smith and Fred VanVleet alone, just those two guys, is already more than KD makes. And so that then you're running into some similar problems. Just to run it through for people, the Rockets are $7 million under the first apron before July 1st and 4.6 under it after July 1st. As far as the tax goes, they are 2.6 under the tax right now, and after July 1st, they'll actually be over the tax. So their margins are just so tiny, and VanVleet makes too much, and then Dylan Brooks doesn't make quite enough to be the main salary piece in a trade like that. Whereas you compare it to Miami, just for the sake of the other teams we've looked at in this little exercise, Ben, their books are perfect for a Durant trade because they have Wiggins, who makes more than Brooks does. They have Duncan Robinson as kind of a middle-tier player. They even have other guys who didn't even come up when we were talking, like Kyle Anderson or Davion Mitchell, who are at like 7, 8, 9 million. They have this whole stack of things, whereas the Rockets are just so young that it's just hard to make the money part of it work, no matter how many different iterations you try. It's almost impossible.
Too many top-heavy guys. They have a upper class and a lower class. They don't have a middle class yet. Whereas Miami does have that right now, especially with Wiggins. You mentioned like the Fred VanVleet thing. I was going to counter him because I thought it would work. Jabari Smith and Fred VanVleet for Kevin Durant, but I want both the first-round picks back. If I'm just getting one player and then I'm taking back a massive salary. Not sure he would have went for it, but immediately it's $2.5 million more than the Suns can take back. So it doesn't work. The Suns can't take back more than they give. So I just don't think it's going to happen with the Rockets, man. Unless the Rockets want to get creative, I don't think it's going to happen.
The other part would be just to play it out. I think technically it gets pretty close to working if you included Ryan Dunn. And the Suns I believe, would be allowed to send him out because he's on his minimum contract. I believe that would be allowed. Although maybe not because it's not an NBA minimum. I don't know. If they were able to buy out Beal, you still keep that possibility open, but then you can't use this year's pick because you're probably not buying Beal out until a little bit later into the summer. It's hard to do this stuff. We don't have all the cap sheets and everything, but I don't know what changes if you're able to buy out Martin and Micic and get under just the second apron first. I don't know if that really helps anything. It probably doesn't change too much. But then obviously buying Beal out, you're probably under the first apron as well. So, yeah, this one makes so much obvious sense, but it's just funny because it's like, well, even if you're like, it made me think this, Ben, like even if you're talking about Devin Booker, who we know that the Rockets are batting their eyes at every chance that they get, the trade is just as hard to do. And they've been teasing about, oh, we got the Suns picks because we want to do a deal with them. How? It's like, well, you didn't set up your books to be able to do a trade with the Suns, so.
Well, I think they thought they did with Jalen Green, and that went horribly really quickly.
I guess if the Suns were trading Devin Booker, maybe they would be more open to Jalen Green. So maybe that's the master plan here.
Well,
but that's not happening.
Yeah,
not
no, someone should have checked that plan a couple more times. I don't think it's going to happen with Houston, man. And not because dumb people in the comment section want to say that the Suns are going to get anything back. It's simple dollars and cents. They don't have the middle class to make it happen. And honestly, I agree with Houston. I wouldn't give up Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and Jalen Green. Like, that is too much when you don't have to do that. But yeah, it gets really confusing.
Never say never. These people are paid good money to come up with these very complicated trades. I'm sure there is some way where you can make the trade machine say this deal works. I haven't found one that makes sense, but I also don't have the time on my hands to do a 3, 4, 5 team trade and get into all that nonsense, especially with all of the Suns' layers of cap problems that you can't really do in the trade machines that are available to us, whereas the teams can. So I'm sure that there's something in there, but it feels like a big long shot that they're going to find something that actually works out. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. Back with more throughout the week. Finalists in the head coaching search. More draft breakdowns. Guests coming up. Keep it right here. We'll talk to you tomorrow.